Hello all, a very good day to all of you. This is Vilasini from Veranda IAS. And friends, இன்னைக்கு நம்ம என்ன பார்க்க போறோம் பாத்தீங்கன்னா the daily current affairs analysis for the dates 26th and 27th August 2025. Yes, so all of you know the source that we are following is the Hindu International Edition. Okay, so in the context வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா yes, every day before we start, right, we start off with on a very positive note. So in the context there is one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, the Japanese 5S technique. So yes, when we prepare, நம்ம prepare பண்ணும்போது பார்த்தீங்கன்னா the environment, our workstation, right, also really matters. So in this case வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா the Japanese 5S technique basically goes one step beyond and talks about how your workplace or your study place should be kept. So number one பார்த்தீங்கன்னா it talks about sort, right? So whatever books you have, whatever plans you have, sort it out in order. Next one பார்த்தீங்கன்னா it says set in order. So once all your things are sorted, high priority to low priority, right, the place has been decided, arrange the requirements, arrange the things as per your schedule and timetable, right? Next is shine வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா talks about cleanliness, but also beyond that it says that your entire workplace should be designed in such a way that it is very effective and easy for you to understand where what is there, right? So that is the next one. So sort, set in order, shine, and the next one is called as standardize. So இந்த இடத்துல வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா yes, it is important to set right principles, right targets for you when you go about executing your tasks. That also really matters. And yes, finally sustain. So the idea is one day mattum neenga proper vechittu if you forget, it doesn't really count. The idea is to ensure that you remain consistent, right, and there is a certain degree of perseverance. So in the context yes, only if your surrounding environment and if your study place, right, is completely decluttered, completely organized, right, well planned, அப்போதான் வந்து நீங்கள் படிக்கும்போது கூட you will have an idea as to how you should plan, right, what are the books that you need, what are the sources that you need, right? So this amount of clarity is required. So in this case, you may think preparation is just a relationship between you and your books, but no, your environment also matters, especially your study environment, factors like lighting, right, good food, water, adequate sleep, all of this can have a long-term repercussion on your preparation. So in the இடத்துல, like, converting this into a positive way or like, remaining stuck to your old habits is your choice. But here what I would urge you is, as a civil servant, it is important to be a little bit organized, planned, right? So here if you start utilizing such techniques, it will somewhere create a difference in the way you perceive and look at things, right? So this is the Japanese 5S technique, okay? Okay, so in the context வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, let us talk about the important topics in the news. Okay, so 26th August 2025 பொறுத்த வரைக்கும், right, the important topics of discussion, number one, India Fiji call for free open Indo-Pacific region to deepen defense ties. So in the இடத்துல we are going to talk about the relationship between India and Fiji. So Fiji வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா ஆஸ்திரேலியாவோட ஈஸ்டில் இருக்கு, right? So how can the relationship between India and Fiji be a win-win for both? So here வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா yes, this is your GS paper 2, international relations. Next, Indian Navy to commission stealth frigates Udayagiri, Himagiri in Visakhapatnam, right? So in the இடத்துல yes, we are talking about new ships which are going to take over, indigenously built ships. So here வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா it is one way promoting the idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat. So we will talk about all of this one by one. So in the இடத்துல defense, right, GS paper 3, science and technology. Next, IIT Bombay researchers use microbes to unlock nature's hidden rules, right? So basically வந்து microbes ஓட feeding mannerisms, right, which வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா how they in turn continue to evolve, that can be understood. So இது வந்து we will try understanding in detail. So here again your GS paper 3, science and technology. Next, India-Japan ties, old partners, new priorities. So in the context of how has the relationship between India and Japan evolved over the time, right? And all of you know that our Prime Minister, right, is going to be visiting China and Japan. So in the context yes, what might be the scope of discussion in these meetings, right? Also you know that India வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா along with Japan, it is a part of a grouping called as Quad, where also US and Australia are there. So yes, Indo-Pacific region countering China, how could this be the way forward? இது எல்லாமே we'll try understanding. Again in the context வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா GS paper 2 international relations. Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh mark anniversary of exodus from Myanmar. So see, one of the most persecuted communities also pathina the Rohingyas. So Rohingyas are Muslim minorities from Myanmar, right? So here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா few years ago when the situation was very bad, they started migrating in large groups, right? And currently வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா பங்களாதேஷ்ல இருக்கிற கோக்ஸ் பஜார் இந்த இடத்துல வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஏகப்பட்ட ரோஹிங்கியா settlements are there. So in the context about Rohingyas, right, the place from where they fled, right? So what was the situation? We'll try understanding few things. Okay, so இது வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா again it is to do with an international relations issue, right? So GS paper 2 IR. Fine. Next, talking about topics for 27th August, right? So number 1 வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா we'll be talking about the implications of tariffs that the US government is planning on impose on India, right? So it is set to come to play. So in the context, how will India brace itself for 50% tariffs, right? So that we will try understanding. So in the இடத்துல again bilateral trade, GS paper 2, right? Next, 9 pilgrims among 13 killed in as heavy rain landslides in Jammu. Okay, so here we have been constantly discussing about flash floods, we've been discussing about cloud bursts, landslides, not just in the context of Jammu, but ninga pathina we've also been talking about it in the context of Uttarakhand, right? So Uttarakashi, right, in Chamoli, in other places in Jammu like Kathua. Similarly, vandu pathina here many pilgrims who are going to the Vaishnava Devi temple, along that route there was a massive landslide and it led to the loss of many lives. So in the context, yes, the Indian Himalayan region from a disaster management point of view இந்த டாபிக்கை நம்ம அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் பண்ண ட்ரை பண்ணுவோம். ஸோ ஹியர் வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா your GS paper 3 disaster management. Next, Quad talks will be on the agenda when Modi meets Japanese Prime Minister, right? So here வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா Quad, like I already said, we will try understanding about Quad, right? The significance of Quad, how can Quad help in navigating the way forward, especially in promoting a blue economy in terms of like you know better maritime positioning in the Pacific region. இது எல்லாமே we will try understanding. So in the context, yes, Quad as a grouping, your GS paper 2 international relations, the Adi Karam Yogi initiative, okay, and it's an initiative for tribes, right? So tribes வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா when we're talking about inclusive growth, for growth to be inclusive, right, all sections of the society need to be empowered. So tribal people, right, they do not get the fruits of development met. So in the context, tribes நம்ம எப்படி empower பண்ணலாம், right? What should be the ideal way forward, right? How can we mentor them, right? Youth-ஆ இருக்கட்டும், skill development-ஆ இருக்கட்டும், job opportunities-ஆ இருக்கட்டும், right? Awareness on government schemes-ஆ இருக்கட்டும், about all of this வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா the Adi Karam Yogi initiative is talking about. We will try understanding this. So here உங்க GS paper 2 social justice. Next, light pollution. So there's an article about light pollution in general. So light pollution, impact of light pollution on biodiversity, on flora and fauna, right? How it can affect the ellame we'll try understanding. So here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா உங்க GS paper 3 environment கீழ under the scope of pollution, this could play a vital role. Okay. So guys, with this, let us start off for the topic of discussion for today. India, Fiji call for open Indo-Pacific region, agree to deepen defense ties. Okay, so in the context, yes, the relationship between India and Philippines, we are trying to broaden this relationship, deepen this relationship, not just in terms of military capabilities, but also in terms of health, in terms of economy and trade, right, in terms of defense, all angles we are trying to deepen our ties, right? So let us understand a few things first. So now one thing you need to understand is, look at this map, right? So this is Australia. Australia oda east la vandu pathina you have the Fiji, right? So Fiji, Tonga, idu ellame many of these places vandu pathina the relationship with India is that way back then, right, many indentured laborers, right, were sent to these places. So here if you see many like people who have descent from India might also be living over here, right? So this is one thing. So in the edathla the geographical location, it matters for any topic that you read. So here on the east of Australia you have Fiji. Okay, so let us understand few things. So in the context, yes, when our Prime Minister, right, also met, also like you know they had discussions. What they basically agreed was bilateral ties வந்து they are going to further enhance and strengthen. எந்தெந்த angles, defense-ஆ இருக்கலாம், health-ஆ இருக்கலாம், trade-ஆ இருக்கலாம், agriculture-ஆ இருக்கலாம், climate action-ஆ இருக்கலாம். In all these sides they are planning on enhancing their vision. So inga vandu there has been an interesting word which has been put forward, okay, and that word is called as velo mani dosti. So dosti, yes, we know it means friendship. So velo mani vandu pathina Fijian dialect la vandu it is a type of friendship which is built on love, compassion and trust, right? So here vandu this is how we are going to strengthen our ties, India and Fiji. Idha vandu reaffirm pannirukanga. Next, in this context, endha angles are we going to we are going to collaborate with them. So number one, yes, in terms of defense context la pesumbodhu what they have ideally suggested is that with regard to Fiji, right, number one, we will try to ensure that military capabilities can be improved, right, and also with regard to the Pacific region, right, promoting better maritime security, right. Also apart from this, what we have said is the exclusive economic zone security, this can be promoted, right. Also with regard to cyber security, we could also have a cyber security training cell. All of this was ideally suggested. Next, in the context of economic partnership, right, the emphasis was on enhancing trade, enhancing our trade relationship. Okay, also they have spoken about, right, different sectors of cooperation irukano, and the idea is to also ensure that our products can have a market over there, right. That was also suggested. Next, with regard to healthcare, right, coming up with super speciality hospitals, right, certain ambulances, in the madriyana healthcare line la kuda we are trying to interact and engage with Fiji. Also on this line, yes, we have a scheme which is called as the Jan Aushadhi Yojana. So here the idea is to provide generic medicines at subsidized prices. This can also benefit the Fijian population. Okay, next one, yes, apart from this, what are the other areas that we will be cooperating? Talking about sustainability and sustainable development, right? Both of these sides have agreed on promoting enhanced sustainable development. For example, India oda context we have something called Mission Life. Mission Life stands for lifestyle for the environment. So here the emphasis is on coming up with a pro planet people approach, which means nammaloda actions, right, it has to be favorable to the planet as well as the environment, right. So these actions need to be conscious actions, these actions need to be eco-friendly and environmentally responsible actions. Okay, so here vandu they are even talking about the idea of what is called as a circular economy, right. So guys, you will learn about these two terms. Okay, so one vandu pathingana it is called as circular economy. Okay, and there is also something called as linear economy. Talking about circular economy is one in which the waste is very less. So whatever goods are produced, right, at the end of their life cycle, they are brought back to the mainstream system either by reducing, recycling, right, like all types of reduce, recycle, reuse, anything. So in the context, you should understand that yes, with regard to Mission Life, promoting sustainable development also both these sides have agreed upon. Next, also with regard to promoting blue economy. Blue economy na enna? So in the edathla vandu pathina marine related sector oda potential harness pandradhukku there is good scope, but just that this needs to be done in a sustainable manner, right. So with regard to the Pacific region, yes, 2050 blue strategy has been cited, where number one the production of fisheries or even to do with harnessing or tapping the marine related goods and sectors, this needs to be done in a very sustainable manner. Next, apart from this, they have also spoken about renewable energy. Renewable energy patti pesumbodhu solar energy. For example, India vandu pathingana it paid forward the idea of International Solar Alliance along with France, right, in the year 2015 when COP21 of the UNFCCC took place. UNFCCC as in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, right. So in the context, yes, Fiji is also a part in this and it is quite active also. So here the idea is to tap solar energy, because see, why is this important for a country like Fiji? Yosichu paranga, Fiji oda position, if you take a look at the map, right, if you take a look at this map, just a moment, yeah, you will notice that Fiji is completely surrounded by water, right. So in this context vandu climate change nadaka fossil fuels nama use panna one of the major damages which can take place is that glaciers will melt, water levels will rise, and this can lead to submergence of many coastal lands, right. So countries like Fiji are a threat, and very sadly the reality vandu enna pathingana the countries that contribute the most to climate change are in fact least affected by it, and the countries which contribute the least to climate change in fact face the harsh brunt of climate change, right? So in the context like yes, engaging in solar energy, right, shifting towards cleaner energy systems will actually go a long run in helping a country like Fiji, because number one, it will help address the harmful effects caused by overconsumption of fossil fuels, right? These are different things. Adu thavara, yes, Fiji is also quite active in what is called as the coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure, right? So in the context where climate change is happening, so to brace ourselves for climate change, the infrastructure that we have should also be resilient enough. That is the idea of CDRI, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Next, yes, in this context, pharmaceutical initiatives are Sanjeevani, right? So in the மாதிரி நிறைய initiatives இருக்கு, right? So apart from this, even in the context of tertiary healthcare also, we are planning on like pitching in there. So in the context like yes, we have to also understand one more word, right? So I'm not sure if you all know this word, but let's try. Care economy. So India வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, if you talk about India in the context of goods and services, we are quite good with services than production of and manufacture of goods, right? So in the இடத்துல yes, now in our country, right, care based services like geriatrics இருக்கலாம், senior citizens-காக இருக்கலாம், right? Care based services வந்து is a new economy which is opening up, care economy, right? So in the care economy includes paid and unpaid services to do with care. So here in this context, exporting care related services could also be another area that we can think about. Okay, so these are few discussions which were there, right? Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, with regard to culture, right, like I already said, indentured laborers நிறைய பேர் வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா of Indian origin, they are found there. So here, in order to promote our culture over there as well, what we have suggested is we have committed to sending Hindi and Sanskrit teachers. That was one. Next, apart from that, in general, with regard to security, right, maritime zone secure pandradhukku both these places have agreed, right, with regard to tackling crime, right, with regard to using technologies, sharing of information, decimation, right. So all these things were being discussed overall, right. So guys, these were the major outcomes of this particular meeting, right. So in this context, India and Fiji, India-Fiji oda relations, right, and what levels of ties that we are going to engage, all of this matters. Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, உங்க GS paper 3 science and tech, let's take a look at one topic. Stealth frigates Udayagiri, Himagiri to join the Navy today, right? So in the context, yes, please understand few things. So we are talking about a project called as Project 17A, right? Project 17A. So the idea of this Project 17A is to incorporate stealth frigates, right, into the Indian Navy. So here the idea is, number one, இந்த இடத்துல வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, both these ships getting commissioned at the same time is the first time that such an event is happening. Okay, so here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, talking about the nature of this, it's a Shivalik class frigate, right? What are the additional features it has? It has advanced weaponry, right? It has stealth features, modern sensors, right? All these are incorporated in it. Fine. And next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, there are two major dockyards which are associated with it. Okay, so here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, the important feature with regard to Udayagiri is that it marks the 100th indigenous warship designed in India, right? So here one of the most interesting features of this particular thing is that 75% of the content used in the building of this ship has been procured indigenously, right? So here when we're talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliance, right, having a certain degree of indigenous content will play a long role in helping us achieve there. So இந்த இடத்துல வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, 75% of the content of the ships is indigenous content. Okay, so that is one. Next, apart from that, yes, few more things வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா, these frigates are fitted with CODOG, right, which is nothing but combined diesel or gas propulsion systems. Okay, so இது எல்லாமே are the features of this. So yes, as a country, because we are a peninsula surrounded by water on these sides, having effective maritime security, especially along the Arabian, Indian and Pacific, matters, right? So in the இடத்துல, the idea is to bring in these frigates so that, like, our maritime security and our borders can be well protected. Okay, so this is the intent. So in the context, yes, let us understand a few things about these stealth guided missile frigates. So number one, is it very large? No, it is a medium sized warship. Usually அது எதுக்கு யூஸ் பண்ணுவாங்கன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா, sometimes to assist in the context of warfare, for patrolling, right, for escorting larger ships. Idukkaga we tend to use the stealth guided missile frigates. So here yes, it has certain additional incorporations in it, right? For example, it can have GPS, radar, etc., right? Surface to surface air missiles irkalam, right? And sometimes it is designed in such a way that it does not fall on the enemy's radar, right? So these are few things with regard to stealth guided missile frigates. So defense related equipments, right? Ships, anything which is in use, missiles, etc., UPSC point of view, its characteristics, right? Is it indigenous or not, right? And in the context what is the type of propulsion system that it has, இது எல்லாமே could be significantly important. So yes, are you all aware that there was a project called Project 75, right? So if you have any idea about Project 75, please reply on the comment section below. Okay, so next, moving forward, IIT researchers use microbes to unlock nature's hidden rules. Okay, IIT researchers use microbes to unlock nature's hidden rules. So here, yes, IIT Bombay they've conducted a research where they have identified that depending upon the kind of sugars that different types of microbes like bacteria feed, future la adu evolve agra nature we can try understanding, right? So for example, what they have said, they have used Escherichia coli, okay, and a particular form of yeast. So now the idea is, அது consume பண்ணுற ஒரு food, if it is different, the manner in which they will evolve will also be very, very different. So this tells us that evolution can one be predictable and also unpredictable. Both are highly possible. So how could this be very useful? Like we can cultivate microbes for for the sake of producing medicines, biofuels, etc. We can also ensure that antimicrobial resistance as a problem can be addressed. இதெல்லாம் தான் future potential with regard to this. So in the context, yes, please go and read about prokaryotes, eukaryotes, right? So bacteria, virus, fungi, இந்த மூணுத்துக்கு நடுவுல இருக்கிற difference. So let me ask you a question. So what do you guys think? Is virus a decomposer? Think about it. Is virus a decomposer? Right? So if you know the answer, reply on the chat section below. Right? Is virus a decomposer? Think along this. Fine? Okay. So now moving forward, let's talk about this. India-Japan ties, old partners, new priorities. India-Japan ties, old partners, new priorities, right? So here it's quite an elaborate article, right? So they've discussed many things over here. So now, if one thing you need to understand is, yes, our Prime Minister plans on traveling to Japan as well as China. Right? So Japan and China, so two countries where our relationship with these two countries are along two different levels, right? So what will be the discussion in the context of China? Japan order, what will we be discussing? Will we be talking about Quad, right? Infrastructure angle, what are we talking about? Idu ellame discuss pannirukanga. So let us understand this one by one. Okay. So now in this context, right, number one, what we need to understand is Japan, right, plans on investing somewhere around 68 billion, right, in the context of with regard to infrastructure irkalam, clean energy irkalam, right, along all these lines they are planning on investing. So here, number one, we need to understand that many things have been spoken about. For example, right, having a high-speed rail corridor in India, right, again, which will be influenced by Japanese technology, that has been cited. Next, we've also spoken about revising the security declaration that we have, right? So earlier the 2008 joint declaration on security was there, right? So now depending upon the changes which are taking place, we will fine tune that as well. Apart from that, other areas that we will also engage will be artificial intelligence, right, supply chains, pharmaceuticals, critical minerals, all this, semiconductors, all this has been highly discussed. Yes, and also in this context, right, if we talk about China factor, US factor, Japan factor. So now US is becoming a little bit unpredictable, correct, with Trump imposing severe tariffs on us, which is amounting to the range of 50%, right, and which can have a great impact on our exports, right? So in this context, yes, many sectors can also get affected. So US, when the US shifting a little bit is a little bit of a problem for us. Talking about China, yes, we are slowly trying to mend our relationship. Yes, especially after the Galwan Valley clash which happened, right? Now yes, with regard to having higher visas, deeper trade ties, yes, also with again reopening of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. In the ways that we are trying to improve our position with China. right? But on the other hand, yes, we also know China is an aggressor, right? So yes, with regard to Pacific Ocean irakatum, or with regard to its Belt Road Initiative irakatum, or with regard to its String of Pearls Initiative irakatum, right? India has to be watchful. So yes, overall this will be the scope of discussion. So in the context, yes, how are we required to balance it out, right? So we will only know the outcomes of this once the meeting has taken place. But yeah, the significantly important in Pata, number one, when we talk about Japan, right? So Japan has been one country with whom we have engaged very deeply in terms of infrastructure, be it bullet train, right? So multiple projects we have engaged with Japan. And yes, Japan is also a part of the Quad grouping, right, which also includes US, Australia, India and Japan. So in the 4 countries in the Quad grouping la irukumbodhu, yes, effective maritime security monitoring the Pacific region is possible. And somewhere வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா it can also help counter the growing Chinese influence in the Pacific Ocean and the South China Sea. But இதே கான்டெக்ஸ்ட்ல நீங்கள் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா if you talk about our relationship with China, right? So China, yes, it has always been a little bit strained, right? Especially because with regard to trade, right? China having certain practices of capturing domestic markets, right? China's Belt Road Initiative, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, all these have been some areas, right? So in the context, yes, how are we going to deal with this? But in this context, we should also understand that when US imposed heavy tariffs on India, China even went to the extent of calling US a bully, right? And they said that one country cannot impose so much tariffs. WTO principles effectively follow பண்ணனும் இந்த மாதிரி கூட China சொல்லிருக்காங்க. So yes, in a world, right, where the geopolitical order is getting highly fragmented and very diverse from what it was earlier, right, how is India going to navigate its relationship? That is what matters. So in the context there, India's relationship with Japan, right, then that of China, and then navigating the US factor. And yes, in this context, we should understand once the meetings take place, right? We all know that Shanghai Cooperation Organization or a meet is also scheduled to happen in China. So in the context, adukku munadi what are some developments, and once that takes place, we will be able to understand this topic in detail. Okay, so this is one. So next, yes, any idea the exercises between India and Japan vandu pathina, it is called as Dharma Guardian. Okay, Dharma Guardian. Okay, fine. So now here look at this question. Economic ties between India and Japan, while growing in recent years, are still far below their potential. Far below their potential. Elucidate the policy constraints which are inhibiting this growth. So idu vandu pathina, this question was asked in the year 2013, 10 mark question. So here regarding their economic ties, right, and how is it getting affected, idu dhaan ketirukanga. Okay, so here questions like this come. So any countries that you see in the paper, right, if there is an engagement, bilateral engagement, in the countries length கேட்குற questions ஓட probability is very very high. So for example, India Fiji, right? அதே மாதிரி some other country, India Philippines. So whatever is in news, right, you should have a very good idea, because IR பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் the questions are quite dynamic, right? So current affairs இருந்தா more or less கேட்குறாங்க. So if you have a clear cut idea, it will be quite easy for you. Okay, so that is one thing. Next, moving forward, Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh mark anniversary of their exodus from Myanmar. Okay, so here let us understand few things. Rohingyas vandu pathina, they are a Muslim minority which were found in Myanmar. Okay, so here because of large amount of ethnic clashes, and in Myanmar ninga pathina, they are not recognized as an ethnic group, right? Citizenship is not offered to them. Yes, and because of massive clashes which were taking place, then many Rohingyas started flooding from Myanmar and they started entering other regions, right, through land, through water, etc. So in the context, they all reached Bangladesh. Bangladesh la vandu pathina, there is a place called as Cox's Bazar. And in the Cox's Bazar, ஏகப்பட்ட refugee camp of Rohingyas are there, right? The Rohingyas kulla irukra internal displacement is so high, right? And also sadly, the Cox's Bazar region vandu pathina, it is heavily prone to floods. So in the context, yes, because of ethnic clashes, there is an exodus, right? Rohingyas have come out, but also because of climate change, they still continue to face threats, because Cox's Bazar inga irukra edam vandu pathina, it is highly vulnerable to the occurrence of cyclones and floods, right? So that is also one thing which has been cited over here. So ஏன் இந்த மாதிரியான articles important ன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா, examல வந்து sometimes ஏதாவது ஒரு இடத்துல ஒரு ethnic group பற்றி ஒரு கொஷின் கேட்கலாம் மேட்ச் த ஃபாலோயிங் மாடலில் சில எத்னிக் குரூப்ஸ் கொடுத்துருவாங்க இவங்க லைக் வர கண்ட்ரியும் கொடுத்துருவாங்க ஸோ now you have to match it accordingly and figure out the answer. For example இந்த கொஷினை பாருங்கள். Consider the following pairs. Communities sometimes mentioned in news in the affairs of, okay, so Kurds, Bangladesh, Madhesis, Nepal, Rohingya, Myanmar. So which of the following given above is / are correctly matched? So guys, what do you think is the answer? What do you think is the answer? Look at the options. So what do you guys think is the answer? Okay. So in the இடத்துல yes, Madhesi, Nepal, Rohingya, Myanmar is correct. But with regard to Kurds வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா there is a place called Kurdistan, right? So இங்கே வந்து from parts of Turkey, other surrounding regions, yes. So here Bangladesh will not come, so this is wrong. So here the correct answer is C, 2 and 3. Okay, so இந்த மாதிரி questions can come if any ethnic group is in news, any country is undergoing a major turmoil, political இருக்கலாம், insurgency, right? For some particular reason if it is in news, then here you should know the name of the country, the name of the ethnic group, ஏன் நியூஸ்ல இருக்கு, right? இந்த மாதிரி match the following questions examல வரலாம் in your prelims. Okay, fine. So now next moving forward, let us talk about the topics of discussion for today. India braces for impact of 50% US tariffs from today, right? So yes, this has been lot in discussion, right? So inga vandu we need to understand few things. So talking about the background, yes, several months earlier vandu pathina American President Donald Trump, he had threatened that endha countries la vandu US has an unfavorable trade balance, and the countries la he would impose high level of retaliatory tariffs, and the amount which he had mentioned that time was 26%. Now வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா after that initially in the context of India he said he would impose tariffs na என்ன, imports மேல impose பண்ற ஒரு tax, right? So he would impose tariffs on Indian goods entering the US. Okay, so here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா the tariffs which were mentioned were at the range of 25%, but later he also said a penalty would be imposed and totally the value was increased up to 50%, right? So now we are all awaiting and with regard to how are we going to cope up with this, right? So 50% tariffs vandu will start, right? So in the context of one thing you need to understand is what was the reason for this. US was not happy with India procuring crude oil from Russia as well as S-400 defense systems from Russia. So in the context yes, US threatened that it would impose tariffs at this particular rate. Okay, so this was the problem. So in the context if we need to understand few things, right? Let us just look at this image. What will be the major exports of India to the US? According to Commerce Ministry vandu pathina electrical machinery, followed by that pharmaceutical products, nuclear machinery, pearls and precious stones, mineral fuels, right? In the 5 தான் வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா are India's major exports to the US, right? So these sectors can get affected, right? Some of these sectors can get affected, so that is also being cited. But here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா what they have also cited is based on this additional tariff வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா it is exempted for few sectors. என்னெல்லாம் பாத்தீங்கன்னா does not apply to iron, steel, aluminum products, right? Passenger vehicles such as sedans, sport utility vehicles, cross utility vehicles, minivans, etc. So they have also listed some particular items where exemptions have also been given, right? So in the context when we read about articles like this, number 1, what will be the goods or the sectors which are affected, right? Major exports of India to the US, right? India la the sectors which will be affected like agriculture, MSME will be affected in sollirukanga, right? So all these sectors which are to be hit, apparel, textiles, gems, shrimp, carpets, furniture, all these are major sectors which will be effectively hit. Okay, and yes, in this context India vandu pathina we have always said that these tariffs being imposed on India is quite unreasonable, right? So in the context India has always cited that when several other countries in the world are looking out for their own interest, why can't India? For example, if Trump is accusing India of procuring crude oil from Russia, right? European Union also does, and in fact US itself procures uranium from Russia. So in the context that there is high level of Western double standards, right? So இது வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா has also been cited. So these are few updates. So இதுக்கு அப்புறம் இருக்கிற updates வர we will be covering that effectively. Okay. So this is one. Next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா let's look at this topic. Unfortunately, the number of deaths caused due to calamities is increasing day on day in our country. So here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா 9 pilgrims among 13 people killed as heavy rain landslides battered Jammu, right? So guys, it's not been 2 weeks. இப்போதான் வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா we saw that Uttarakashiல வந்து there were massive cloud bursts and that triggered massive flash floods leading to great damage to life and property. We were not over with that, and recently pathina Jammu, Kathua, and also in few other places, Kishtwar, right? There was also landslide events, right? And this has also affected a decent amount of people. Next one the pathina very recently, that is as of yesterday, right? So pilgrims who are basically traveling to the Vaishnava Devi temple, right? So on that route, some of them were killed because of landslides. So in this context, Indian Himalayan region, right, Indian Himalayan region la irukra hazard zonation mapping idu patti neenga padikkanum, right? So here vandu pathingana, yes, it is located across like zones where it's not very stable. So inga vandu pathingana, number 1, the occurrences of enna madri calamities is always in the news. So number 1, if you see the occurrence of earthquake ah irukattum, flash floods ah irukattum, cloud burst events are irukattum, yes, landslides. The same landslides in the context of snow is called avalanche, glacial lake outburst floods. All this is becoming very common in this particular region, the Indian Himalayan region. So in this context, disaster management point of view la vandu pathina, number 1, knowing the phenomena as such, like how an earthquake occurs, how landslides occur, right? What are the causes, what are the impacts, right? What is the National Disaster Management Authority guidelines with regard to this particular calamity, right? Also wherever possible, quote Sendai framework, build back better strategy, right? Capacity building improve பண்ணனும், இது பத்தி எல்லாம் you have to read. இது எல்லாமே வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா go back and read your core disaster management areas. So in this context, one thing you need to understand that yes, landslides are increasing. Trigger factors could be sometimes flash floods, could be cloud burst events, etc. So landslide nadakumbodhu large quantities of debris, mud, water, etc. completely flow down. So the nadaka great damage to life and property, many infrastructure is affected, transport and communication life is affected, flora fauna is affected, right? And many personnel, right, have to be deployed into these places. For example, the national NDRF, right? So the disaster response force, the SDRF, in the mari many personnel need to be employed in these areas, right? So this is the occurrence of such calamities vandu pathina day on day it is constantly increasing. So indha edathila enhancing resilience, disaster management, right, incorporating better practices, early warning systems ah irkalam, right, the role of IMD, right, in providing warnings ah irkalam, right, enhanced research and development, learning from nariya countries oda best practices, இதையும் நம்ம எடுத்துக்கலாம் so that we can try addressing the issue. See, at the end of the day, they say prevention is better than cure, right? So disaster நடந்து disaster நம்ம எப்படி tackle பண்ணணும்னு யோசிக்கிறத தாண்டி ஒரு disaster நடக்கிறதுக்கு முன்னாடியே how do we prepare ourselves? That should be the thought. Okay, so in the context, please go and read all these core areas from disaster management. Vulnerability na enna, disaster preparedness na enna, what is the disaster management cycle, the various calamities which are taking place, causes, effects, and NDMA guidelines for it, and also read about Sendai framework. That's it. Okay, so in the context, let's move forward. Let's try looking at one particular question. Flooding in urban areas is an emerging climate-induced disaster. Discuss the causes of this disaster. Mention the features of 2 such major floods in the last 2 decades in India. Describe the policies and frameworks in India that aim at tackling such floods. Okay, so answer in 250 words. So இது வந்து ஒரு 15 mark question, right? So yes, many questions like this are on the rise in the exam. So you should have a clear-cut idea, right, of such questions and how to tackle them. Okay. So next, moving forward, Quad talks will be on the agenda, right, when Modi basically meets, when Prime Minister Modi basically meets the Japanese Prime Minister this week. So in the context, yes, we know that ahead of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, which is to take place in China, right, our Indian Prime Minister is going to be visiting both Japan as well as China. So in the context we already saw, right, what will be the major important pointers or scope of discussion. So in the context of what they said is that a central portion of the discussion is primarily going to revolve around Quad. So Quad is a grouping which includes US, Japan, Australia and India. Idea வந்து என்ன? To promote stability, peace and enhance maritime security in the Indo-Pacific region, right? So in the இடத்துல they have also spoken about other pointers. For example, cross-border terrorism, right, tackling cross-border terrorism, right, and next வந்து with regard to infrastructure, bullet trains in our country, right. So இந்த இடத்துல Japan will pitch in, right, also with regard to economic security, semiconductors, artificial intelligence, இந்த மாதிரியான areas we will be able to cooperate and engage, right. So all this has been cited. So yes, let the meeting take place and after that we will know, right, what is the outcomes of the discussion. Okay, so next moving forward, the Adi Karamyogi initiative to put tribal change leaders throughout their places at village level, right. So in the topic or a major discussion வந்து என்னன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா it revolves around tribes in India. So yes, நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா tribes வந்து commonly face பண்ற one problem is number one, they are vulnerable, number two, geographical isolation. So India நீங்கள் பாத்தீங்கன்னா you'll usually find tribes very deep inside forests etc. There is a certain degree of geographical isolation இருக்கிறதுனால contacting them is becoming difficult. And yes, again, they are so ingrained in their own culture, own traditional practices that very few people are getting empowered, educated, skilled and then they are coming out. So in the context, yes, Adi Karmyogi initiative oda primary aim வந்து என்னன்னா to empower tribal population in our country, right. So tribal leaders improve பண்ணணும், youth mentor பண்ணணும், right. When we talk about inclusive growth, right, we should also ensure all sections of the society are benefited. So tribes வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா they should rejoice the benefits of development, right. So இதுதான் வந்து the Adi Karmyogi initiative. Okay, so now here ஒரு interesting-ஆன feature what they have said is that the reason why, right, tribal areas continue to face backwardness, right, was not because there was lack of schemes but because there was lack of motivation in implementing these schemes, right. So that has also been one of the major reasons. So in the context, yes, a few things about this particular scheme we will try understanding one by one. So basically வந்து என்னன்னா when we talk about governance, right, grassroots level governance, right, participatory democracy, top bottom approach illama bottom up approach இருக்கணும் where the local people are involved effectively, right, in their decisions which will be taken for them. So here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா the idea is to enhance governance, right, in tribal regions, right. So multiple tribal leaders will be created, they will be trained and they will empower other people. So here வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா people centric governance promote பண்ணணும், right. So here வந்து we will be targeting 20 lakh change leaders, right, and this will span across 1 lakh villages அப்படின்னு சொல்லியிருக்காங்க. Idea is tribal communities empower பண்ணணும், they should know all the schemes which are available for them, right. Youth கண்டுபிடிக்கணும், we have to mentor youth, right, we have to train them, educate them, tell them about the opportunities available for them, tell them about the schemes available for them, right. And next வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா the idea is to ensure that overall governance can become much more inclusive, bottom up approach இருக்கணும் and not top bottom approach. So different sections of people will be incorporated to train tribals, right. So for example, you will have teachers, you will have social workers, government representatives, right. So இந்த இடத்துல வந்து multiple youth leaders etc. and all this is to ensure that we can promote what is called as a problem solution mindset. So இவங்க tribes face பண்ற problemsக்கு தேவைப்படுற solutions, mentoring of youth, livelihood opportunities, like you know telling them about the various schemes available for them, and the overall aim is to empower tribal population. So ஏன் இது வந்து ரொம்ப important அப்படின்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா India வந்து has a plan of Vikshit Bharat by 2047. So Vikshit Bharat 2047 attain பண்ணணும்னா number one, there has to be inclusive growth, right, and next we also have to harness the demographic dividend that we have. So in the context, empowering the tribes, giving them opportunities, teaching them the opportunities that they have could go a long run in helping us reach the target of becoming Vikshit by 2047. Okay, so this is one thing. So in the initiative pati poi padinga, try to understand who is getting benefited, right? What are the components? Idu ellame you can go and read. Okay, so this is pretty much about this particular topic. Next, in the context there was one topic. Illumination at US Open is designed to cut light pollution. So we are not going to be talking about the US Open, but rather we are going to be talking about light pollution, right? So in the context of what is light pollution, what could be the implications of light pollution, இதை வந்து நம்ம understand பண்ண try பண்ணலாம். So number one, when we talk about pollution, நிறைய types இருக்கு, air, water, soil, etc. But specifically talking about light pollution, right? Too much of artificial lighting could be a problem to both creatures on land as well as in water. So let us understand this. See, யோசிச்சு பாருங்க, night time if there is a harbor, okay, and in the harbor there is heavy lighting. So how can this affect the species அப்படினு பாத்தீங்கன்னா, number one, right, species what a biological cycle, right, their circadian rhythm, this can get affected. Next, இங்களோட reproduction can get affected, feeding patterns can get affected, mating patterns can affected, right? So in the context even disorientation can take place. So all this can cause heavy stress on many aquatic species, right? ஏனா இந்த இடத்துல too much lighting இருந்துச்சுனா the clear cut difference between day and night becomes difficult. Talking about species on land, right, again too much exposure to light வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா it can affect breeding patterns, it can affect their diurnal nature, right, it can affect reproduction. இந்த மாதிரியான ஏகப்பட்ட damages can be caused upon species due to excessive and harsh lighting. Okay, so here light pollution, right, in the long run வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா it can be very negatively impacting on many species, right, because at the end of the day these species also have a clock in which they are operating. They have their own feeding patterns, reproduction patterns, right, communication patterns. இது எல்லாமே வந்து can take a hit if at all there is severe amount of light pollution which is taking place, right? So in the context of light pollution, examples of light pollution, right, how do we tackle the instances of light pollution, idu patti poi padinga. This is more than enough. So guys, yes, with this we have overall covered the important topics for your 26th and 27th, right? So I hope the discussion was useful. All the best, study well. Thank you.